being tilted for practice. It's the second Wednesday in a row, we've had two back-to-back, and all that's a popular day. Is it really? Yeah, it's, hey, I'm gonna go start on the computer to see what things
Let me call to order the meeting of the Board of Trustees for the Founders Academy for September 19th, 2018. First item on our agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please join me in a moment of silence. Thank you very much. Please be seated. We'll begin our meeting as we always do with the reading of our mission statement. And our mission statement is the Founders Academy is a public chartered school encompassing grades 6 through 12 that is free and open to all New Hampshire students. The Academy develops leaders who understand and apply the lessons of the past, demonstrate exceptional character, and lead by example. The Academy recognizes the importance of balance in the development of the whole person and respects each student's journey. Principled leadership is fostered by means of a curriculum of classical studies that includes analyzing the lives of great men and women of history, mining the rich classical ideals of the Western tradition, and tracing the evolution of precious and costly idea of liberty. And that is our mission statement. That brings us to the first item on our agenda, which is our public comment period. Let me touch on some of the high points of our policy on the public comment period, which is policy BEDH. The first 10 minutes will be set aside for citizens to address the board. The period may be extended by a majority vote of the board. Speakers will be allotted 5 minutes per person. Members of the public may offer comments on agenda items only. The board will not entertain comments on items that do not appear on the agenda. Requests to address the board on matters not on the agenda must be presented to the dean and must set forth the specifics of the subject to be addressed. When appropriate, the board may place such requests on the agenda. Consistent with RSA 91A3, policy BE2B, and the laws pertaining to student and family privacy rights, the board will not place any matter on the public agenda that is to be properly discussed in a non-public session. Complaints regarding individual employees, personnel, or students will be directed to the director in accord with policies KE and KEB. All speakers are to conduct themselves in a civil manner. Obscene, libelous, defamatory, or violent statements will be considered out of order and will not be tolerated. The board chair may terminate the speaker's privilege of address if the speaker does not follow this rule of order. Persons appearing before the board are reminded that members of the board are without authority to act independently as individuals in official matters. Thus, the questions may be directed to individual board members, but answers must be deferred pending consideration by the full board. Okay, so we have 5 individuals who have signed up for the public comment period. The first is Michael Gomont.
Good evening. My name is Michael Gomont. I teach history here at the Founders Academy. This is my 3rd year at Founders. I came to this school because I believe in its mission and vision, building character, growing leaders, defending liberty, honoring those that have sacrificed everything to protect our freedom. I also believe in the principles that are laid out in the Student Code of Conduct, being open-minded, being respectful, being courageous, and helping others. These are values that I infuse in my lessons every single day. I challenge students to be critical thinkers, to look at issues from many points of view, to be respectful of the views of others, even when they may disagree, and to be polite in their disagreements. I've seen our students grow in their writing, their public speaking, and their problem solving. They've risen to the challenge of high academic standards amid the growing pains of a new school. I'm deeply invested in the school, as are many of my fellow teachers. I'm proud of the work we do. As I look to the spring and our first graduating class, I'm proud of the young men and women they've become in their time here. I'm calling on us to come together as a community and rally behind this school and the principles on which it was built. To have respectful conversations with each other face to face and in person. We may not agree on everything, neither did the founding fathers. George Washington's cabinet was composed of men who disagreed on policy and principle, but they all believed in what America was founded on and what America could be. It's healthy to have disagreements over issues which we feel strongly about. Let's not lose sight of the fact that we all care about this school and the people who compose it. Abraham Lincoln once said, "If destruction be our lot, we must ourselves be its author and finisher." I urge us to take these words to heart. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much, Mr. Gilmore. That was a great statement. Next person who has signed up for public comment is Patrice Bernard.
I brought my timer again, so I'll go over. Patrice Bernard, I have a son who's a junior. Number one, the mission statement. Principled leadership is fostered by means of a curriculum of classical studies. Please define classical studies. Mr. Frischnet, the former board chair, founder, and director of the school, explained the trivium and quadrivium to parents. The school, the board, and the staff members need to do a better job defining that for our current families and staff members. Policy BEDH specifically states in item number 2 that members of the public may offer comments on agenda items only. That presupposes that all agenda items will be posted 24 hours in advance. Both last month and this month, that has not happened. You void your own policy when you do this, thus opening the door for public comment on anything. Please post all agenda items. Number 3, please advise whomever is putting together your agendas to proofread. For example, this month, item number 2 is missing. Also, item 3 says you will review and approve June's minutes, yet the link is to August minutes. As a public charter school focusing on classical studies and leadership, it's embarrassing to have an agenda that has not been proofread. Humanities is our cornerstone. August minutes reflect my concern about a 91A violation of the right to know law. The contract was tabled and does not appear on tonight's agenda. All contracts for public employees are to be voted on in public and must be made available to the public. In the past 4 years, no public votes have been made to approve any contracts, nor have these contracts appeared on any agenda. Please post all contracts this week. I prefer not to have you submit a formal right-to-know request and would prefer that you embrace the transparency afforded New Hampshire citizens by RSA 91A. Number 5, please provide on the website the terms of all board members. Last month, you discussed only the terms of the parent reps on the board. All board members should have their terms posted to avoid any confusion, as those terms are staggered, excepting the founders who have life terms. Number 6, Dean's report. Number 2, Student Services has been holding individual meetings with high schoolers to look at credits earned and credits needed. We are 12 days into the school year, and there are not that many juniors and seniors. But my son has not had an individual meeting with anyone, so this isn't quite true. I would hope that this would be done in a much more efficient manner, and that seniors would be done first, followed by juniors, and so on. It is critical that any adjustments be made now to ensure graduation and the proper preparation for life after high school. Dean's report number 6 by charter. See page 10 of the charter under the heading committees. Initial subcommittees will include curriculum development. The curriculum committee was established in the first year of the school with Patty Humphrey appointed as the chair. No internal curriculum committee can supplant the board committee. I expect that this curriculum committee will have public meetings, agendas, and minutes. I'm eager to attend and have been asking for such since year 1. The Dean's report is also lacking enrollment information. Last year, the DOE reported us as having 303 students, and yet in our board, the budget, it says that we've had to make adjustments because of our enrollment. We should know what that enrollment is. The treasurer's report looks different this month. It looks more like it doesn't look like what we've been seeing in previous months. It doesn't include a check manifest. When was the Finance Committee held to discuss this past month's expenses and the report that would be given tonight? Number 10, the school, in one of your notes here, note number 2, I believe it is, the school cannot consolidate the schedule to reflect enrollment. The Finance Committee can certainly recommend an adjustment to the board, but as the board approves the budget, thus only the board can make those necessary adjustments into enrollment. The school has no authority whatsoever to approve or adjust anything without board approval, and of course, it would have to be an agenda item. The draft audit report we're going to be hearing about tonight was not attached to the agenda. By law, if you believe Dean Everett, who has been publishing stuff on the internet, draft audit reports are public documents. How can a member of the public tonight ask or comment on this report as we haven't seen it? It's silly not to make it public, as I doubt any of our Finance Committee members will be able to answer questions next month. So are you planning on asking the auditors back to answer questions for the public? I believe my time is almost up. Thank you and have a good evening.
Thank you, Mr. Bernard. The third person that signed up is Peter Olson.
How are you this evening?
How are you?
I'm going to actually ask if I can stand here so I can see you and also them. Because
Please feel free to stand wherever you like.
Thank you. Appreciate it. My name's Peter Olson. I have 2 sons here, both in high school. One's a senior and one is a freshman. So the first thing I'd like to say is congratulations on the 5 years. We're very glad that we've been able to be here for part of it. And I'd like to offer an apology for not always being quick to say thank you. So I would like to say thank you to Mr. Klein, Ms. Moat, Missy, Ms. Nichols, specifically, for your continued support and encouragement for my sons. I've said this before, my sons are far from perfect, but they're challenged and they're encouraged here, and they're becoming better people. Mr. Gomont emailed me yesterday, and thank you, Mr. Gomont, for this, about something he watched my older son do in class. He said that my son helped a fellow student in need, and that he commended him for his good character and for modeling good character to others without being asked to assist another student. I'm very pleased that my sons are learning to think here and that they're learning to lead by example. And I'm very thankful that they have a chance to do what's kind of in the mission of the school, and that it's been noticed by the teachers that are here. I'm thankful for the administration and the teachers at Founders and your continued interest in doing the best for and encouraging the best from my sons. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your statement,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Olson. The fourth person who signed up is Michael Lawton.
Hi, good evening. I'm Michael Lawton. My son Jonathan is a sophomore here at Founders and has been at the school since its opening. And in full disclosure, my wife is Susan, who is on the Board of Trustees. I first came up to first of all thank the school, administration, staff, all volunteers, everyone involved, for what I thought was a very smooth beginning. No school starts perfectly. No school year begins without some hiccup, and even those that did pop up were handled, I thought, efficiently and effectively. I was fortunate that my son did not face some of the challenges that other students have with regard to scheduling and busing and whatnot, but having experienced that in other schools as both a teacher and as a parent, I understand that's just part of the job. It's part of the landscape. The other thing I wanted to share was in, kind of tandem on what Mr. Olson was saying with regard to thanking the staff and for the school, thanking the school for existing, because my My son has truly evolved or matured in some way. And he started off this year with, just ready to go, excited. We're in, week 3, and he's become so much more independent, so much more in charge of his learning, more so than I think I've ever witnessed him in the past. And so he loves it here. He loves it here. He has a great group of friends. He is thankful to be asked to help out and volunteer. He will go out of his way to help out if asked. And Sue and I are incredibly proud of him for being able to have that opportunity. Lastly, I was going to quote some lines from Federalist 10 with regard to the challenge of faction and the challenge of how, when the country started, one of the greatest fears was that the minority would be completely shouted down. It would not have an opportunity to express themselves in front of a majority. Where the opposite is also possible true, where the minority can become so fractious that it could actually impede or impede the forward movement of governmental action. So that was what I was going to comment on, but I'm just, again, of a very grateful mindset for you, for Mrs. Humphrey in particular, for having the vision to found this school. And classical, non-classical, have a happy kid. And that's all a parent could ever have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lott. Board members, we've used up the 10 minutes allotted. We have one more speaker, and I would like to hear the speaker. So it would be appropriate for the board, or if it's the will of the board, to make a motion to extend our public comment period.
I absolutely make that motion.
Motion by Sue, second by Christie. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstaining? Okay, so by unanimous vote, we will extend our public comment period to allow the 5th and final speaker, who is Maura Ryan.
I just have a quick thing. I know you're supposed to talk about the audit tonight, so I have some questions relative to that, and I was hoping that I would get some answers. I'd like to know where the funding for the free and reduced lunch goes for kids. I'd like to know where the funding for special education goes. I'd like to know in the budget what the $7,500 for contracted special ed services goes to, whether it's paras or not. I know that the student gets each student in this school gets their piece of money from the state. There's an additional $1,920 that's allotted for special education. And if the public school is not providing those services, you are supposed to get them, and I'd like to know what you're doing with that funding. And their free and reduced lunch is a little bit over $1,800, and what's being done with that particular money. I also wanted to ask if there could be some explanation of whether or not there's any type of merit awards for teachers. And I wanted to know if we could clearly define the roles of the administrative staff. I think that's causing some confusion because we don't know, Mrs. Stewart is in charge of guidance, but she doesn't actually see students, so what does she do? So my personal feeling is that all communication should be clear and concise. I think there's been confusion around that, and I'd like to get some clarity.
Before you go, you listed 3 things at the beginning that you wanted to find out about the audit: free reduced lunch, special education money. What was the third item?
I said that every student gets their piece of money from the state, and then on top of that, the free and reduced lunch is a little over $1,800. The special education is $1,920.
Okay, I wrote down this. I wanted to follow up with the auditors and convey your questions, but I thought there was a third item that you wanted.
The $750 in the budget for the contracted special ed. It could be for the paras. I just want clarity on that because it was not explained.
Okay. Some of your questions are related to the audit, and I'll personally convey them to the auditors if we get an answer. And the other ones, I'm going to refer to the administration to see if we can get some other answers at a future meeting for you. They're not all connected to the audit, but we'll do what we can.
Okay.
And that concludes, thank you very much.
They're connected to money, show me the money.
That concludes our public comment period. And so the next item on our agenda is review and approval of the minutes from the August 22nd, 2018 board meeting, which should be in your materials. Is there any discussion about those minutes? If not, I'd entertain a motion to approve the August 22nd, 2018 minutes. Anything that look through them? Or anyone who's ready to make a motion? Motion by Sue Lawton to approve the minutes of August 22nd. Is there a second? Barbara seconds. Any discussion? All in favor of approving the minutes of August 22nd, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstaining?
I'm going to abstain. I wasn't here.
2 abstentions. Christy and Matt, for the record, have abstained. So the minutes are approved with 2 abstentions. Item 4 on our agenda is the student trustee report, and I see that we won't have one tonight. Is that correct? And that brings us to our dean's report.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and thank you all really for your time. And this is not an easy task, and the fact that you're all volunteers and willing to help us out here is just tremendous. So don't ever think that you're underappreciated, and if we don't think of you throughout the day, we do. My dean's report is attached to the agenda and is always found online. I just want to highlight a couple things. We did have opening ceremonies that went very well. I want to thank in particular Mr. Gomont, Ms. Brown, Ms. Ephraimson, who helped with both the middle school and the high school ceremonies. We had a very successful back-to-school night for new families to be able to meet teachers and get a portal training. I want to thank in particular the 12 student ushers who volunteered their night very early on in the school year. And I'll add, not all 12 ushers were returning students. Some had only been in the school about a week or so, and they were very eager to help and show off their school to their parents. I thought that was fantastic. Also want to thank Ms. Marcotte for hosting the portal training. Our volunteer of the month is Tom Hoyt, who's done a fantastic job being our fundraising chair. And at that point, I'm going to ask that everyone look at my report for the further details. But I do just want to add one thing from the report, and that is that Liz Gabbard, who is a talk show host, radio talk show host in Nashua, has had the school on now a couple of times, was in attendance at our last meeting, has expressed interest in getting more involved. And I'd like to see her on our advisory board that's spelled out in our charter. It's relatively vague in our charter, really who gets on an advisory board and how that works. Right now we have 2 members on it, and those members have gone through the board for approval. So I'll leave it to you as to how you want to approve that tonight, but you will recall her bio and so forth. Her write-up was circulated to you on the 5th of September. So I would recommend it, but I leave it to you as a new member of the Board of Advisors. And with that, I'll conclude.
Discussion about the recommendation to appoint Liz to the Board of Advisors.
Can I ask, who are the other 2 members of the Board of Advisors?
State Senator Sharon Carson, who at one time was a trustee and because of time constraints could not make that commitment, so came on as an advisory board capacity. The other is Mr. Brian Woodworth. Interesting story on him. He's a lawyer, but he's also an expert in French and Spanish, and has expressed interest at one point in helping us out when we were in a bit of a pinch for a language teacher. Luckily, we didn't need to go to that measure to have somebody temporarily come in. However, he said he would be interested in helping whenever our world language teachers would need it. And so his name and bio was forwarded probably a year and a half, maybe 2 years ago.
Can I continue with one or 2 more questions?
Yes.
So has this Board of Advisors ever met? Does it have any function?
No, and I'm glad you mentioned that because I'd like to read from the charter the only description that we have of it. And it's as follows: the governing board of trustees shall be augmented by a board of advisors. The board of advisors is an advisory group of non-voting members representing areas such as business industries, academia, law and ethics, research, international relations, student and faculty, legislators, and other topics of interest to the board.
So can I now make a comment about Liz in relation to this suggestion?
Yes, please.
And then I will stop. So I think Liz would be a wonderful person to, be an addition to our school. I would love for her to be on this board. I don't believe that this time there's an opening for her particular slot. We'd have to review it. So I would actually prefer to see if we couldn't nominate her to the board, and I would be willing to take on the task of doing the research, talking to her, and all that kind of stuff. Since the advisory board kind of is asking her to do kind of nothing in a way, unless she decided to make something out of it. Is that, I don't know if I have to ask anybody's permission, if I can just go ahead and do that, if I want to, talk to her, make a nomination, that kind of thing, to this board.
So I'm not fluent in all of the processes by which a board member is chosen, when the slots are, what slots you would fit in, and all of that. And I think that if it's appropriate for him to review that and kind of provide some feedback to the board at a future meeting as to what our openings and roles and those sorts of things are. I agree that she sounds like a very dynamic person, and having her involved in the board could be a very good thing. I just don't know what our process is. So I support that idea. I don't know where we're going.
Okay,
I
well,
feel like I want
I'll
to
just
map
go ahead
first.
and talk to her and write up something and see where we go to, rather than agreeing now to, I wouldn't object to her being on the advisory board, but it's rather asking her to join a fandom of sorts.
I think I agree with that sense that if we have an advisory board visit meeting or hasn't come together yet, maybe the initiation of a third member is a good time to give that group a little nudge, or maybe one of the board members would take charge of calling them together and actually trying to get it to do some advisory functions for us. And then hopefully that might inspire more people to join it in the future, even if this ultimately moves on to this board. But if we've got a phantom board that's not working, that needs attention too. So kind of a little of both, I guess, from my personal point of view. I think that consideration of this for a board position, if there's an opening and she fits an appropriate role and all of that, could be something the board would take up. But in the meantime, I don't have any reason not to want to appoint her to the advisory board and maybe use that as a chance to get the advisory board going. That's my only 2 cents, but I only vote once. So others, thoughts on this?
I have that kind of the same feeling about, we kind of need to figure out what that board of advisors does. Because at this point, it's like, hey, you want to come in over here and do what? I think that it's kind of we're in that in-between stage where we need to kind of say what it is we're asking her to join to do. I'd be kind of hesitant to say to somebody, hey, join a board of, we don't know what you're doing and what we want your advising to be on. Because I'm sure there is something that she could do and the whole group of them could do that would be very helpful to the school, but figure out what, I don't think I would want to put that out there for
I
something.
think the idea might be to further develop the advisory board. We have it, it's time to start developing it from year 5. I think that's the goal. We should be a very strong candidate for that. Having her on this board, we can, go back and look at the charter, we can put that on a future agenda and look at who's holding what seat and the terms and make sure everything's very clear.
No, I don't object to her being on it, as long as she doesn't feel like she's being sidelined in some way. And if we gave her a charge, like, this hasn't been meeting, and would you take charge of it and see if you can't get it going? That might be a very good thing.
I agree with that. I think also this board could keep in mind that there is an advisory board, and occasionally when we have some perplexing issues, we could maybe ask our advisory board to look into it a little deeper and come back and give us some recommendations on certain things that we're working on too. So that we're actively asking them to do some stuff rather than kind of letting them do whatever and report this whenever. Other thoughts? So in terms of actions, if everybody sort of is of a consensus that consideration of a position on this board needs a little bit more exploration before we're ready to take it up, that question I think we should defer until a future meeting when that homework has been done. We could take up the question tonight about the appointment to our advisory committee if we so chose. Or we could defer that question as well if we decide that isn't the move we want to make. What's the will of the board?
I think that the nebulous nature of the advisory committee or advisory board, excuse me, is the heart of the problem, right? So I think maybe a further conversation with this woman to see whether she'd be, just to get a feel for where she would feel better used, whether it be putting some juice into the advisory board or serving on the board of trustees. I think it sounds from the commentary that either is a viable choice. We can find out where she would feel best utilized, and maybe that she'd get a little bit of jazz from revitalizing or vitalizing the advisory board.
I'd also want to be careful before we talk about a board seat to make sure we have one. Because talking about, hey, come join our board, and then having to realize that later we're not lined up for it would be a misstep.
So I definitely wouldn't want to let her talent go far from us in any way. Because I think with what we're talking about for the community outreach and what we want the students to be able to do, which is a very unique background that our students may be able to, and we may have someone that's very interested in radio. We may have someone that's very interested in her background that, maybe that might be the perfect person. So I wouldn't want her to go very.
I think that makes sense. It occurred to me as you were saying that if we develop that advisory board and the school continues to succeed in the way that it has been, and we've got a number of volunteers coming forward, that advisory board could be something that prepares people for a seat on the board by giving them some of the issues in a kind of a advisory capacity rather than a voting capacity. I know that as we sit today, some of us jump right onto the board, and it's because of need, but hopefully we won't always have those needs. So we'll be able to develop leadership a little bit.
I think I can make a motion on that. We can't discuss the board with her, so that's out at the present time. That if we invite her to be on the advisory board, we do it in a way that honestly describes what the advisory board is at this point, and ask her to be the linchpin for a more active advisory board. So is that a nomination? Is that a motion that I can make?
That is a proper motion to appoint her to the advisory board with some description of what it is and perhaps challenging her to energize or take a leadership role on that group. Any discussion? All in favor of making that appointment, say aye.
No.
Any opposed? Any abstaining? Okay, so by unanimous vote, that appointment is made. Is there any other action items required of your deeds report?
No, that concludes my report. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, that brings us to item 6, which is our treasurer's report. Barbara, do you have? I'll turn it over to you to lead us through that.
The August report is basically just includes all our expenses because, again, it's the way we get paid by the state, so there's nothing reflected there. And I think that the auditors are going to present to us in detail or summarize the audit that they come out and spoke with us earlier in the year about, and maybe answer some of the questions that were brought forward tonight. So I'd like to just turn it straight over to the auditors.
I'd like to just add on there, our financial statement, there's been a lot of work put into that to get it to look the way it does. It's changed.
Yes.
And that's because we are finally in sync with the software company. They've got a lot of programming that they had to fix. There were things that we didn't carry. So it's taken a tremendous amount of time from the business manager, but she's done it, and we're able to use it now. So this is a big deal. It's been a long time coming, and it's great.
Absolutely.
I do want to welcome our auditors and begin that presentation, but we've got to make a board decision to accept this treasurer's report before we do that. Is anyone willing to make a motion to accept this treasurer's report? Motion by Christie. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Matt. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstaining? So by unanimous vote, the treasurer's report for this month is accepted. And with that, I want to welcome representatives from Nathan Wexler, our auditing firm, Ashley Major and Kelly DeMore. Please come forward.
Excellent, so we'll give you a little.
I wanted to do one more introduction before we do that. We also have as a guest today Jane Waterhouse from the Department of Education, and we're pleased she accepted our invitation to attend, meet our board members, and to enjoy this presentation as well. So Jane, thank you very much.
Thank you for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be here.
And so I see you've already got us up on the wall there.
We're ready to go, it looks like. But thanks for having us. I'm Kelly DeMori, and I'm a partner in my current company. My colleague Ashley is a manager and a leader in the charter school area. Has done a lot of work over the past few years, and we're so excited to have been a part of this since the beginning. I can't believe 5 years has gone by already. But we're here to present the audit for this year, which is your fiscal year ending June of 2018. So we'll talk, this PowerPoint that we're presenting is really a way to summarize all of the results of the audit, the key takeaways, the things that you need to know as those charged with governance. Obviously, there's a lot of financials that go along with this, but these are the highlights and a great document for the board to really take away from the audit what they need to. We're a little bit of control freaks, so we're going to try that on presentation. All right, so we'll go to the next page here and talk a little bit about what an audit is. So I think this is good clarification for everyone. We repeat this to all of our audit clients every year. But really the objective of an audit is to obtain reasonable, not absolute assurance that your financial statements are free from material misstatement. So what does that mean? That means we don't look at everything. We couldn't look at everything. If we didn't, it would be so expensive and you would be so sick of us and we would spend so much time here. So instead of that, what we do is what's called a risk-based approach. So we come out for some planning, we understand your systems and controls, what checks and balances are in place or what may not be in place. And based on that information, we decide where should we focus our testing. There's some areas for all audits that are inherently risky, which we'll talk about, but there are some other areas that may be specific to that particular client. So we design our work around that, and we'll talk about at what level we do testing based on materiality. So I know materiality and what means a lot to you and the money in your pocket is different than what we're looking at, so I understand that, but it's a way that we approach this audit and we understand that. So we have substantially completed all of the audit. We're just waiting for some final approval. And one thing that is important, and I usually lose a lot of people after I say, we have a clean opinion. That's usually the one thing you want to hear, that there was nothing that we found that would create, other than an unmodified, unqualified opinion. If there was, we would have talked about it before now. So everything was available for us. We were able to access all of the documents we requested. Everything was available to us. That doesn't always happen. So things were in order and that made our job easier.
So I'm going to go into a little bit more detail about exactly what we tested and how we tested it. Now, as Kelly said, our purpose of an audit, what our job in an audit is to obtain reasonable assurance. So we tested what we felt was necessary in our professional judgment to obtain that assurance. So the first thing that we did was for cash, and we usually take a balance sheet approach, so we preface that. So we'll start with the balance sheet and we go through testing those balances, and then we do some revenue and expense testing from there. So for cash, we confirm all your cash accounts with a third party. So we look at third party evidence as the best audit evidence because we're getting it from someone other than the people giving us the numbers. So everything came back clean there. We also performed some testing on the bank reconciliations on a sample basis, investigating any reconciling items that are significant or unusual. Again, everything was fine there. For receivables, we view subsequent collection of the state aid receivable, so we make sure that the school gets the money that they have reported in as the receivable. And as I'll mention in another slide for revenue, we also perform a predictive test on that as well, because basically based on the end of year report, we can come to what that receivable number will be.
Ashley, what's a predictive report?
So that means we take the per pupil aid that the school is supposed to receive and the number of students that they have, and we multiply that to get to the total revenue number, which is our predictive. We predicted what the revenue should be, and then we look at the payments that they've received already, and we get to the number that they have left to receive, which will be their receivable. So it verifies both sides of the revenue.
It's a really quick and easy way to ensure that all the revenue has been accounted for.
And then we look at management's assessment of collectability on other receivable balances. These are pretty small in the case of the school. I think there was a small pledge receivable balance based on something, as well as a special education reimbursement from some of the sending districts that are there. And I'll talk a little bit more about that later. Fixed assets, we review a selection of fixed asset additions to invoices to ensure that the amounts are verifiable, that the amount reported for the cost of those fixed assets is what they say it is. We look at the estimated useful lives for reasonableness. So when I say for reasonableness and estimated useful lives, a lot of people think that accounting is black and white, there's no gray area, there's no estimation, but there's actually quite a bit of that. So when you look at the useful life of, say, the tables, it doesn't make sense that they're going to be used over 7 years. Yes, so that's reasonable, but if you had 20 years on that, you might question it as not being reasonable.
We see this happen more and more often with technology. As technology becomes newer and newer, it turns over faster. So if you have a computer that you're trying to capitalize for 15 years, that's probably not valid anymore, where at one point maybe it was.
We also review your repairs and maintenance accounts. We look at the expense accounts to make sure that any items that should have been capitalized were capitalized. So any items to capitalize would be anything that has a useful life of more than 1 year and is over a certain dollar threshold. And then we assess the reasonableness of depreciation expense. That's done through those useful lives and in total combined. Deferred revenue, that's a liability. So what this is you have summer school revenues that are collected in June. Your year end is June 30, and so you collect them in June, but the camps don't run until July. So you have revenue that you've taken in, but you haven't earned yet, so it's a liability. Just in case if those camps don't run or something happens, you can return those funds versus already counted in revenue. So we test summer schools, the schedule to ensure proper revenue recognition in the current year, making sure that those, the cutoff in the proper period is correct. Accounts payable and accrued expenses. So we perform subsequent payment testing of the payroll related to accruals. So this is if you have a pay period that crosses the fiscal year end, some of that will fall as an expense in the current fiscal year, some will fall in the subsequent fiscal year. So we compute that accrued liability and make sure that everything's in the proper period. And then we also perform subsequent disbursement testing to assess the rest and cutoff on all your other accounts payable. So we look at bills paid that come in after year end and other things there, other disbursements and invoices to make sure that they're recorded in the proper period. Net fund position. So this is kind of your retained earnings and net assets. But you have some temporarily restricted assets or fund positions. So what this is we consider charter schools kind of quasi-governmental, which means even though they're governmental, they still have some elements of nonprofit organization. So when funds are raised for a specific purpose, they're temporarily restricted until they're spent on that purpose. And so with the case with the school, there sometimes can be contributions, but mainly it's funds that are raised for certain clubs and activities. So if I have a bake sale for theater, those funds need to go to theater because the people buying from that bake sale or contributing funds think that their funds are going to theater, and they are. So we review the temporarily restricted detail for all student activities funds, and we analytically compare it and make sure that it's properly recorded at year end and restricted if it should be, or unrestricted should those funds have been spent.
And these things are important to all nonprofits when there's an outside restriction associated with money. It's a heightened responsibility, whether it's a gift, whether it's for a particular purpose like the school clubs. So we spend a lot of time when we do our audits to make sure that those are accounted for appropriately.
So for revenue, I already discussed the predictive test for state aid. We also look at donor contributions, as Kelly said, and so we select over our materiality threshold, and then also usually some under that threshold to make sure that they're properly recorded and there's proper donor documentation and everything. And then we also did some increased testing this year on in-kind contributions, including donors, dues, projects, and legal fees. These are two important areas to note for the school this year. And I will look at closer when we look at the budget to actual, but I wanted to highlight that here as a part of the revenue testing and or the revenue of the school. Expenses. We recompute the overall payroll expense from the payroll tax returns and compare them to what's recorded on the books as an expense. We perform analytical procedures and other key accounts. We talk about depreciation. Another area is interest on debt, payroll, and then occupancy costs. And then we also obtained in the current year a summary of the legal fees to verify proper reporting that all expenses were properly captured. So in the current year, this was a significant cost to the school. There was a lot going on related to governance, bylaws, policies, the leases. And so I wanted to highlight those costs because it was somewhat unusual for the school operations. The school spent about $58,000 in legal fees, and the foundation spent about $26,000 in legal fees, and this is as of June 30, 2018. So there's a period that's happened before that and prior to that, but it's just for fiscal year 18 that those expenses were incurred. And then we also evaluate different related party transactions. So there's different things that go on. Some are disclosed in the 990, others aren't required by those rules and regulations. Other things, it's as simple as the foundation and the school are a related party to each other, so we look at those.
And related parties can sometimes be a higher risk in an audit environment, so we do want to know when there's those, spousal relationships and different things like that, and we'll spend some time making sure that the proper controls are in place in those areas.
And then another part of our audit, so every year we're required to perform what's called unpredictability testing. So as Kelly said, we've been with you from the beginning, so I think this is our 5th audit we've performed. And so the board and the management get to know some of the things we tested. We already told you what we were testing. So what we do is incorporate an area of unpredictability. This could be viewed from the risks we see, the new areas that something came up, so we want to test that more in depth. It can be just anything different that we're seeing. So we really think critically about what we're doing with each client. We have a meeting of the whole team plus an outside person, and we discuss the different things and come up with these tests.
So in the current year, we even think we got some ideas for next year based on some of the public comments. So we're going to come to these more often.
So one item we did was we independently verified a selection of the audit support documentation provided by management to the source documentation to ensure that no changes were made. So if management handed us something, we went out and did a little bit more due diligence on that to make sure that it was actually what it was and wasn't manipulated or changed in any way. And it appears, based on our testing, that there were no manipulations in anything, got everything agreed to the original records and seemed to be true to form. And then another area we thought was important for the school was we wanted to independently look at the website and areas normally accessed by the public to ensure that all appropriate documentations and notices were accessible to the public. And we really looked at this more towards governance and financials than anything else, because that's kind of our area. And I was able to find an updated board listing, board agendas and minutes, specifically from the past year, prior audits, and then the prior IRS form 990. So that was everything I was looking for. I was able to find it neat and clean and quickly. So Kelly mentioned materiality a lot. I threw it out there a lot. This is basically what we base all of our testing and our audit on. It's what we look at. So as Kelly said, we can't look at every transaction. We'd be here all year. It would be a lot of work and be very expensive. So we have what I like to call a secret recipe that auditors use based on professional guidance. And what it does is it takes what we find to be most important to the organizations and the users of the financial statements, and it boils it down to how we test to make sure that the financial statements are free from material misstatement. So in your case, we found that total expenditures and revenues would probably be the most indicative of the activity of the school in any given year. And then we took 2% of each of those, and this is as of the audit planning numbers, and that's based on professional guidance of what levels you choose. There's a tolerance, and then based on the risk you choose between that. So overall, boiled down to a financial statement, materiality of $38,000. So what that means is that if there was a misstatement of $38,000 in your financial statements, that we would say, we can't give you that clean opinion. But in order to get that, we then boil it down even further in our base soup plotting for our recipe to get to a testing threshold of $9,500. So that means we tested all transactions over $9,500 in your financial statements.
So we don't want to test just the $38,000 and above amounts, right? Because what if there's a couple that fall below that aggregate to the $38,000? So that's why we kind of break it down to a manageable level.
And then by testing at that level, say we found a misstatement when we were testing at the $9,500, and we don't think it's an isolated incident, based on our judgment, then we would boil down and test even further and deeper to make sure that we're not getting to an aggregated level of the $38,000. So, and then we also have what's called a trivial misstatement level. So what a trivial misstatement means is, based on all these materiality levels, again, there's professional guidance that says that if it's under a certain amount, in your case it was $1,150, we can pass it at the work paper level, and it doesn't raise to going into more of our things. And a lot of times that happens with rounding misstatements. So we have $1 or $2 here or there that is deemed rounding, that's passed at the work paper level rather than having to rise it up through our.
And this is one where, it's my money, $1,000 is a lot of money, right? But we have to draw the line at some point. And anything above the $1,150, if there was an adjustment that we proposed or thought was needed, we would hear about it, whether management chose to accept that adjustment or not.
And as Kelly said, $1,000 is my money. Well, of course, my household budget is a whole lot less than $2 million. So to an individual at $1,000 or even $38,000 seems like an awful lot, but keeping it in proportion to the school's overall budget, it's a little bit less. So now here's a little bit of meat and potatoes from the financial statements. I'm not going to go through the whole document. It's, I think, about 51 pages. But I wanted to point out a few highlights, and I thought that the statement of budgetary comparison was really the best snapshot to point some items out. And so one thing I wanted to highlight is the use of a budget. So as you'll see here, we have an original budget presented and a final budget, actual amount, and variances. So you may ask, what's the difference between an original and final budget? Well, in governmental accounting principles, you have to